Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Business Innovators Radio. Again, your host, Matthew Lochran, Principal Consultant of Midtown West Media. Today, we have a very fun and engaging program all around the Oregon Innovators Series. Today, we have President and CEO of Oregon Fruit Products, Chris Sarles, as well as the Director of Sales for the organization, Becky Westby, on the show today. We'll be diving into some best practices around international markets and exporting, and just very excited to have you guys on the show. Welcome, Chris and Becky. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, these Oregon Innovators Series has been a lot of fun to run, and just getting some great information for folks about wanting to, expand their companies overseas. So, but Chris, I'd love to maybe just start with you here. If you can just share a little bit maybe about your background as well as maybe the Oregon Fruit Products business, that'd be great.
You bet. Oregon Fruit is an 82-year-old family-owned business here in Salem. And it's pretty fun to be part of a business that's been around that long, and it's seen so many changes over the years, export being one of those that we'll talk about later today or in this conversation. But Oregon Fruit has been a canning company for its entire life and produces products that are sold in all 50 states and in roughly 15 countries. And then as this business has evolved over time, we've really looked for ways to sort of change the way we go to market, add additional products, diversify the business. And again, that's one of the reasons export comes into play. But the business today, covers food service, ingredients. We still do the historical and heritage canned product, as well as some new retail products.
And before the show, I was doing just a little bit of research as well, and it seems like you guys are in some specialty markets as well. I know obviously Oregon has a big brewing scene, and I saw something that you actually supply some stuff to the brewing industry. Can you maybe share a little bit about that niche as well?
You bet. As part of the diversification of the business, we found that we were selling product almost by chance to some breweries for a number of years. And we recognized that it was probably something with the experience that we had of some of the folks on the team that we could do a better job at. And so about 2 years ago, we decided to put our foot down on the gas, if you like, and go out and really work to attract new breweries to the company, as well as to start thinking a little bit like the breweries do through innovation and trying to provide new solutions for them. And so that business has grown nicely. And today we do business with breweries across the United States, again, in all 50 states, as well as in multiple countries. And it's neat that through the hard work of the team, we've been able to create what I think is a bit of a market leadership role there. Again, really trying to help brewers through innovative ideas and helping them solve some of the problems that they just don't have time to solve themselves as small business owners.
No, absolutely. And I think just hearing about that, right? Organization has been in business for over 80 years. You're in all 50 states. You're in multiple countries. So to me, you guys have done a very good job at learning how to scale, right? Learn how to scale the organization in certain areas. And one of those is actually obviously selling outside of the U.S. and outside of our borders. I would love to maybe hear from the point since when you joined the organization to where they are now, kind of where has that the outside of our border sales or the international footprint, how has that gone?
Well, it's very interesting that we've been doing export business since 1980, starting with cans to Asia, canned product, and then moving on to our aseptic purees in the early 1990s. So the export business has been active at Oregon Fruit for a very long time. I joined the organization in 2013 and took over our international division in 2014. And it gave us the opportunity at that time to really address Asia in particular where we saw our Berry Up frozen diced fruit product to be extremely popular, to have lots of product applications for the type of concepts that were operating in Korea, throughout China and Japan. So we're very passionate about our business, and I think one of the more exciting things to dovetail on our fermentation business is that we have over 80 brewing customers as our international customers, the majority of those in Canada, but we're seeing growth in Korea, China, and Japan for fruit-based beers.
And I think I would add a couple other thoughts. One, kind of going back to your very first question and comments, but I think that the reason that Becky and I are able to do what we're doing today is that there's been 80 years of a history and heritage and families in this business that have allowed us to be in a place today where we can kind of carry forward all of that hard work and be respectful of the past and kind of build on that hard work that they put forth into a new Oregon fruit that hopefully will be around for generations to come. And so one of those areas is export. And as we look at it, it's really the diversification and kind of the balancing of our stool between the business of retail, food service, ingredients, and then export. And so we look at, a healthy balance between all of those really makes the business more sustainable over the long term. And so as I think of our fellow Oregon companies who think it sounds like a lot of work, I think it's just a very important thing for them to stop and think about, target a country or two, and it's a place in which they can make sure that their business is also healthy and balanced.
Yeah, Chris, I think you made a really good point right there as well, right? Is target a country or two, just get your feet wet, if you will. And Becky, maybe you can weigh in on this as well, but can you maybe talk about your Asian migration path, right? So did it start in one place and then branch out? Did you just go, jump full feet in 5 countries at once? And I'd really kind of maybe you could share that information. So if I'm an organization in Oregon, right, thinking about, all right, if I want to start, how do I start and where do I start in regards for that one country? Because if you can maybe share your story, that might be able to help a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, I'll say, first of all, I'm Chinese. So from a heritage cultural standpoint, I think I have a decided advantage over many people working in the industry. The other thing is that I've been in the food service industry for 42 years, so a very long time, and I've had the benefit of working for some extremely large Asian companies based in Japan, and then just prior to me joining Oregon Fruit, I worked for a company called CJ Cheoljang out of Seoul, Korea, and they are a global leader in food manufacturing. So I had the opportunity not only to work with Korean customers, but our global customers from around the world. So I believe that I have a very distinct advantage in terms of going after the Asian market, not just understanding how our products work there, but definitely understanding the really distinct cultural nuances between the different companies or countries in Asia that we deal with.
Yeah, so twofold on that, right? One is, sounds like Oregon Fruit really did a great job in recruiting you and bringing in a true ringer for the expansion in Asia. So kudos to the organization for that. And secondly, you touched on something very important there, which is the cultural nuance. And you mentioned that a little bit when you talked about the diced products as well. Can you maybe describe how Oregon Fruit products are being used in some of these countries that might be either different from what we do in the U.S. And then a follow up to that would be, how did you actually generate demand for that in those countries?
Well, our product is used primarily in the Asian countries for beverage applications and for dessert, which is very similar to what we use the product for in the U.S. I think the most distinct difference is that the flavor profile of the Asian palate, as opposed to what we see in the U.S. So our products are a little sweeter as they go to the Asian countries. And we often see them combined with, for dessert applications, with additional sweetness like sweetened condensed milk and other types of fruits and sugars. So when we look at customers, particularly in China and Japan, we really look at the exact same things that I look at when I'm prospecting new customers in the United States. So what their product application would be, how large their organization is, if we have the opportunity to work directly with their R&D teams, QA requirements. So from that standpoint, it is not much different. I would say the selling capability or selling perspective is considerably different, however.
Okay, no, that's great to hear. So I guess, again, think of someone starting out, and that might be a breath of fresh air that the process isn't all that different in certain areas. One thing maybe what I'm touching is like, how did, obviously it sounds like, Oregon fruit has been exporting for quite a while. But can you maybe lend some advice on if I'm someone new, right? Where would I maybe find a trade show or resources that maybe a specific even target Asia? Since you guys have so much history there, that might be quite helpful.
I think Oregon has a tremendous amount of resource available. They have the various trade associations, whether, like for us, we work with the Berry Commission, WSADA, just the state of Oregon, Department of Agriculture. So there's so many opportunities to research and have help, which I think is what one of the things that I really feel has been advantageous for us, that so many of the organizations that we work with are willing to provide the information that we need, give us the platform through trade missions and various trade shows. And I think that every company who is thinking about entering the export part of the business should be doing a significant amount of research to make sure that their products are relevant and that they understand the requirements for exporting.
I think I'd layer into that like so many places in our lives, mentors can be great tools. And I think all of us in the Oregon ag business and business in general in Oregon truly want to help one another be successful. And I think that there's plenty of people who are successful that you could talk to, who through the Department of Ag, you can find out names of other folks who export. And I think many people would be willing to spend some time talking and coaching people along the way as an additional, maybe real world example of how it happens, and maybe not necessarily the textbook or the Department of Ag or wherever it comes from. Sometimes there's some practical reality that you live with day to day on how the heck you get a label approved or how you get some business licensing done. So I would encourage that as well, to look for somebody who can kind of be your partner and wants to see you succeed.
Yeah, and I can second that. It really sounds like Oregon has done quite the job, even branding itself, as a high quality product around the world from an agriculture standpoint. So it sounds like as well that community is really there to promote. Again, the more Oregon exposure, the better. It sounds like for anyone that's in that business that is, looking to expand across the globe. And speaking of kind of expanding that across the globe. Well, obviously, a question that would come up is distribution, right? I mean, can you guys maybe provide some insights on, how you guys do distribution, or distribution in general for organizations look to either even just to Canada or to overseas, et cetera? I would love to kind of hear some feedback on that.
For Canada, we are selling the majority of our customers direct. So we do have a few exporters that we work with that are facilitating multiple customers. And then for Asia, we use almost entirely exporters that are either fruit specialists. So a number of our exporters really specialize in fruit, and several of them use multiple Oregon companies in the fruit channel and are exporting multiple products in the fruit category to Korea or Japan. And so we've been very successful in Asia in particular with exporters as opposed to selling direct customers.
And when you're,
I might clarify real quick because I think sometimes it's easy to flip the word. Am I correct when you're actually thinking of someone who is importing for us versus exporting?
Yeah, so they are technically importing for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Versus, so it's not a U.S.-based company that's exporting for us. It's rather let's say a Korean-based local company that's importing and then maybe selling multiple Oregon products.
Correct.
In the process.
Correct.
Yeah.
So a follow-up to that, and I was like, do you guys have any recommendations on choosing an importer?
My personal experience tells me that first and foremost, I want to start with some relationship and get to understand the people, the organization, where their strengths are, and kind of how they've gotten to where they are. Then also behind that, being able to understand the customers that they call on very specifically, because oftentimes your export business may go directly to just one or even two customers in a country, if it's say a food service line, versus something where you're putting it into their warehouse and they're selling it as a line item every day up and down the street and all across the market. So I think having somebody who's connected to the right customers is very important, because getting it in the right customer's hands can ultimately lead to getting it into more customers' hands if you're dealing with the right importer. So that, and then also trying to understand and taking a little bit of time to understand their financial stability and understanding, how they do business, terms, creditworthiness, and so forth. There may be small local people who look like they're hungry and ready for your business, and then they fail to pay. And so all the more reason to find a well-established, hungry organization that you can grow with.
I think you just slightly touched on, I think, probably one of the biggest question marks that people have when they're looking to export, right, is how do I get paid? And how do I put in financial controls to make sure I get paid? So I would love to kind of hear some best practices, if you will, that either you guys have done yourself or you've seen, or some suggestions.
So I think that the natural first place to start, if there isn't if you can't get really, really comfortable with the relationship, is you can certainly sell and use letters of credit that will, all but assure you of that payment. It can be restrictive for some, cost prohibitive for some on the other end who don't want to engage in that. But it certainly can be a great starting point. And then as you get going, there's this, as with all relationships, a trust that is built. And from that, you can then begin to, whether you want to call it loosen those terms if necessary, or change the terms to better reflect the changing business that you're doing, i.e., if you begin to build inventories in a foreign country, someone's going to expect that those terms expand some, versus if your first container's going in and going out right to an entire customer base instantly, you would certainly expect to be paid. But just like business here in the U.S., you need to be flexible, observe how your business is changing, and begin to reflect that the same sort of notion in your credit and payment terms.
No, absolutely. I think that's some great information right there. And again, great information for anyone that's looking to, export. And one thing I'll come back to is, obviously you guys are in a very specific, in the food market, and because you guys do canning as well, is there an e-commerce presence, even in that sector? And is that something that you've seen help or hinder with kind of growth internationally?
I guess my answer would be twofold. This is a great example of where, Oregon fruits on the ground floor, like some of the folks listening, learning who are wanting to export. I learned that just recently I can go on Alibaba and I can find our product, and I'm not quite certain yet how it's gotten there. And so,
okay,
learnings in that along the way are, if I look at it and compare it to the presence we have on an Amazon and see, just how significant that growth is as we work direct to consumer, my feeling is that can happen as well internationally, but we're just beginning to, I won't even say we're just beginning to try and learn and understand it. And we see it as a potentially a good opportunity. I think Becky has some thoughts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As the way people buy in general changes, we need to not only be able to adapt domestically, but internationally as well. So as we begin to explore and I think use our experience with our domestic business, I would fully expect that we would expand to e-commerce for our export business.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was just kind of curious about that, right? Because it's really funny, that story about Alibaba, by the way. That, you're not sure how your product is there, but it's there. I think that's fabulous. Obviously, kind of trying to go with an international business, there can be additional pitfalls that maybe some don't see right away. We've gone over kind of the financial controls piece and really the ability to make sure you get paid as one. We looked at opportunities to pick the right, distribution or exporting channel. What about in-country, like generating demand for your product? Because obviously what you're saying is connect with a strong distribution partner who has, the reach, but just because it's on the shelf doesn't mean it's going to sell, right? So can you maybe lend some advice on maybe how to generate demand in a foreign market?
Actually, you go there and then I'll follow.
Okay. So a lot of it depends on who is distributing your product and then our relationships with them. In Korea in particular, I actually, because I spent so much of my career working in Korea, that I actually go to Korea and make sales calls on restaurant concepts, on large manufacturers. So I have direct contact there. I think that's a very specific experience that most companies would not be able to do. So I think a lot of it depends on the partnership that you have for distribution and being able to provide some sales tools to help them sell your product. I think I said earlier that the sales process is very different in Asia in particular, but I think for export in general. So to be able to show applications, we have a sell sheet that we send to our customers that they can do some slight customization on, translation, and then being able to support them for in-country trade shows, and then having good dialogue about how the customers were receiving our products and what we can do to help them build their growth so that it eventually builds ours.
I think I'll layer in twofold because Becky's comments are great about her experience and all that she brings, and I think it'd be really important to make sure all those who are listening know that it isn't that difficult. You can't be scared off by the fact that Becky's done it for a number of years. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't. She just may have a leg up in a certain area with a certain customer, but any one of these Oregon companies can do it and find that mentor, work with the state, and it can work. And it doesn't take away the opportunity. So that's part one. And then you started to ask a question there at the beginning of the other that I think I would touch on, which is, I think there's three things that I would want to make sure I focused on is understanding the legal and kind of requirements for licensing there, to making sure that you understand from a regulatory, the labeling requirements, so that by the time you're done and you've packaged something here and you get it over there and somebody says, well, you're missing 2 hyphens and a parenthesis, we can't sell this. Now what do you do? So it's the attention and the devil of the details on the front side. Get that right. Work with the right people. And then lastly, if it's something that you're proud of with a brand, then make sure that you protect your IP rights and work to make sure that you're licensed and covered in those countries for a period of time, so that you don't go to all this work and then find out that somebody decided to create your same brand there, and you put up a fight and you recognize too late that, there's nothing you can do about it. So doing the right work on the front side. And again, it's not stuff that's terribly crazy, either expensive or time consuming. It's just stuff that you need to say, I'm going to make a commitment to this and stick with it. And I'm going to focus in one area, one country, learn how to do it, and then expand from there slowly.
I would also add that the Department of Agriculture, WSADA, they all do great seminars on what you need and how you need to do it to be fully engaged in the export business. And it is so worth the time. And it actually is very inexpensive, or sometimes free, to participate in those seminars. And it's the best time you could spend in advance of starting your export business.
Yeah, I think there's some great points right there. First, it sounds like, yes, Becky, you are a unicorn when it comes to this market, is what it seems like. So, Chris, congratulations. Secondly, the legal and compliance piece and the labeling aspect of it, to make sure that, if you're sending a pallet of product over, it doesn't get turned down, right? You want to make sure you can actually get to the shelf. So that is ideal. And Becky, thank you for actually answering my follow-up question I was about to ask is, where can you get some of this information about that legal compliance or just the workshops? And you just mentioned that with WSADA and the Department of Ag. So with that in mind, I would love to hear from you guys is, what's that ideal future now for Oregon Fruit?
I would love to see it as this strong, balanced leg of our company stool, if you like, in terms of what it contributes in sales and profit and just stability over the long haul. So for us, it's continued. We want to kind of nurture and support it, but we also are careful because it can also, kind of take a lot of money. If you go all in or too all in, you can find yourself traveling and supporting the markets, and you wake up saying, boy, I don't think there's enough profit in it to cover all those expenses. So it's really going about it with a realistic mindset and attitude that says, we're again going to start small and grow. So that's what Oregon Fruit continues to do. We want to nurture our export business, but we're not trying to shift and do an about face to be all export. So as we do work, hopefully with the state on our government's trade arrangements or lack thereof, we want to also be there to help support other companies in our state, try and make it easier to do business in the export markets.
Great. No, great to hear. It sounds like a well thought out strategy as well. Don't put all your eggs in one basket as well. But definitely, first off, I want to thank you guys for being on the show today. I think you've supplied a lot of information and, again, the great stories as well. And what I've noticed is, through this Oregon Innovators Series is connecting with, so many strong businesses that are, expanding the footprint of Oregon around the world. Locally, you guys do a lot of great stuff, even like community activity. So I would love to, if you guys can maybe share some information of how you guys are engaged in the local community in Oregon as well. I think that would be great to hear.
As some of our values as a company, we really focus on people and taking care of people. And so we work in our community to try and give back. And again, small company, family owned, we don't pour all of our resource there, but we try and be focused on that. And so we've partnered in a local event called Feast. And it's really probably one of the top shelf food, beverage events in the nation here. And kind of tied to that, we worked with a group here that supports hunger and children in schools and taking care of kids who are in need of meals. So we've tied in kind of our passion for taking care of people as a value as a company, tied it to our industry locally here in the food industry, and then right in there with a top drawer event that kind of aligns with what we hope and expect that our brand would be viewed as really high quality. So there's that, and then in addition, other areas we really do try and do a lot of work legislatively to try and ensure that we're thinking and working hard to help the food and beverage community here. It's a giant economic engine for the state of Oregon, and we believe in order for Oregon to be healthy, those industries need to remain healthy and growing. So we want to do our part to help see those things continue to grow.
Well, it's great to hear, right? It's great to hear you guys are being an advocate for the entire industry on that front, but also, your corporate social responsibility program and really kind of giving back to the local, again, everything revolving around food, which obviously ties in directly with you guys. So Chris and Becky, if our listeners wanted to learn more about your organization or connect with you guys, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can visit our website at www.oregonfruit.com. And then if they want to make international inquiries on export, they can reach us at international@oregonfruit.com.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you guys on the show today. Again, a plethora of information about how to export the right way. And you guys have been doing it for quite a long time. And this being a staple company in the state of Oregon, and we really appreciate you guys kind of sharing information with other organizations that are looking to expand beyond our borders. So again, I really appreciate you guys coming on the show today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.